Naughty Dog? More like Dirty Dog? Chortle, chortle. That was the little creatures in Labyrinth that move up the tiles when she writes on them. Crunch is a very serious issue, and today we're going to talk about leaks and their relationship to crunch, if you will. Naughty Dog isn't having the best of times lately. Already beset by accusations of extremely abusive work practices and having to delay its latest release due to coronavirus, the developer found itself supremely fucked by one of the biggest and most exposing content leaks of all time for The Last of Us 2. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. The amount of content that was ripped from The Last of Us 2 and held up to our faces like so many freshly yanked hearts from the chests of martial arts rivals. An anonymous source pretty much laid bare the whole game just over a month before its new release date. 1 hour and 35 minutes of The Last of Us 2 was spilled online, and pretty much the entire plot, with its narrative twists and full ending, were revealed to the general public, many of whom consumed it voraciously and delighted in spoiling it for others, including someone who emailed me the spoilers in the subject header because they can't satisfy their partners either physically or emotionally. That, and they were upset by the fact that I thought Fallout 76 Wastelanders was mediocre garbage. And in The Last of Us 2, how is this about spoiler culture, you mean man, spoiling me the and now put back to work making some new videos about Bethesda, a company that really produces art and worlds people lost hundreds of hours in, and not some shitty guy making shitty videos on YouTube shitting on the other guy that creates masterpieces like Skyrim or Fallout 76 Wastelanders is fantastic and 100 times better than your shitty Outer Worlds. There was absolutely no reason for me to read this email on the show other than the fact that it speaks to the mindset of literally every single Fallout 76 fan on the planet Earth. And while that may be an unfair and sweeping generalization, it's also a fun one to make, so I will continue doing it. Also, while the email may sound like a troll, they seemed very genuinely upset with me because they're a Fallout 76 fan, and therefore they have no ability to control their wrong feelings. Anyway, Naughty Dog's had a shit time, so let's talk about why it deserves to have one. The story of this leak has been a pretty wild trip. After the initial divulging of secrets, rumours about the source of the leak exploded. At first, it was widely believed the leak had come directly from a Naughty Dog staff member, seeking revenge for mistreatment and unacceptably strenuous work hours. Sony and Naughty Dog would later confirm the leak was not internal, though they chose not to say more due to ongoing investigations. Former Kotaku journalist Jason Schreier has been trying to piece together what happened, and so far has come up with a theory that hackers accessed a developer build of The Last of Us 2 via a security vulnerability on the servers of an older Naughty Dog game. Now, while the story at the moment revolves entirely around the source of the leak and whether or not it was all about the crunch, I want to talk about the crunch itself first and foremost. Because in all of the discussion of whether or not the leak was an act of protest, we've kind of forgotten the reason for believing there even could have been a protest. Even in an industry where overtime is ubiquitous, where it's near impossible to find a game that isn't the result of weeks or months of crunch, Naughty Dog stands out, wrote the aforementioned Schreier in an article from early 2020. Naughty Dog has built a culture of perfectionism, where games have to be great no matter the human cost. It's a story we've heard before. A game development studio famed for critical darlings is so concerned with making a game as detailed and lavish and gorgeous as possible, it will put lives on the line to do so. It will make workers break themselves if it means the individual strands of hair on a protagonist's head animate just right. CD Projekt Red and Rockstar Games are two of the most notable examples of beloved developers putting their workers at risk, allegedly, but even companies that clearly aren't perfectionists, like, BioWare clearly fucking isn't, have proven more than happy to put workers at risk if it means getting their game out on time. Naughty Dog keeps many of its developers in the office overnight for extended periods of time while churning out its Metacritic magnets. The company doesn't even really try to hide what it does, more than proud to tell prospective new employees that they're in for some long work hours. In fact, the studio reportedly seeks out artistic perfectionists as staff members, people who are more willing to stay at work late as a function of who they are as people. Mayhaps in this way, Naughty Dog thinks it's minimizing the harm to individuals. If they want to stay in and work until the early hours of the morning, then who is Naughty Dog to stop them? Well, Naughty Dog is their employer. It's their duty to stop them, really, their responsibility to look out for the safety of their staff, and hiring perfectionists with the aim of encouraging them to work excessive hours reeks of exploitation, not prudently synergistic hiring processes. We've already discussed how this industry takes advantage of artistic passion in a previous Jimquisition, and Naughty Dog's hiring methods unequivocally speak to an underhanded attitude that's rife across pretty much all creative industries. And as per usual, much of the talk of crunch hinges on bad management at the higher levels of corporate operation. Uncharted 4, for example, was a stressful and terrorizing ordeal for those who worked on it, thanks largely to a massive reboot of the entire game midway through development, including a change of directors and extensive rewrites. The DLC for the game was even worse to work on, with one developer saying, "It was the worst crunch I've ever experienced." For The Last of Us 2, director Neil Druckmann and his project leads attempted to avoid the horrors of Uncharted 4 by pre-planning much of the game ahead of development, giving the team clear direction and ample time in which to do things. Unfortunately, as seems to be the case with so many troubled productions, the game's scale escaped control. Initially, playtesters didn't like the characters that had been fleshed out in all that pre-planning, leading to rewrites. Then the size of the game grew and grew to the point where it was bigger than all the company's previous titles. The management structure was a mess. People weren't just staying late because they had more jobs than a normal day could contain, although that was also a reason. They were often stuck because their work relied on others completing their tasks, who in turn were relying on others, who were themselves stuck working on way too many other things. You feel obligated to be there later because everyone else is there later, said an anonymous dev in Kotaku's article. If an animation needed to be put in and you weren't there to help the animator, you're now blocking the animator and they may give you grief. It may not even be spoken, it may just be a look. "Man, you totally screwed me last night by not being here at 11 PM. This kind of coercion and shaming is how crunch manifests in most cases. A game company will love telling you that they don't put guns to their workers' heads, they don't force them to be there, but there's always the implication that something would go wrong for the worker if they were to leave. And once again, I'm obliged to say what I always say about the ridiculous strain overly ambitious video games put on human beings.
Crunch is not a triumph of the workforce, but a failure of the management.
We hear all the time about how the latest critically acclaimed AAA video game was produced by pressuring workers to ignore their families and endure psychologically damaging amounts of stress. We hear this and we wonder, is it even possible to get the high-profile, luxuriously detailed, narratively compelling video games we love without a grave human cost attached? People will argue, if you want a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Anthem or The Last of Us Part 2, then you have to accept that people will work their fingers to the bone. You can't have it both ways, we're told. Either you get richly realised high-quality games, or you get developers who are allowed sensible working hours. You must choose. And yet, when a story about shockingly unreasonable crunch periods breaks, it's almost always attached to descriptions of an unreliable work culture and embarrassingly poor leadership. Studios blowing in the wind to please focus groups or publisher executives, sudden rewrites, constant staff turnover including but not limited to management and directorial roles, creative ambition outpacing logistical reason, subpar communication across the company. It doesn't seem like the act of crunch itself is necessary, it's only necessary due to the environment it takes place in. And this is because crunch is the result of bad management masquerading as normal and acceptable business practices. Now look, I'm not saying game development should be fuss-free. Turbulence happens in any project. Mistakes happen. Dramatic rewrites do sometimes need to happen. I mean, I should know. Pretty much everything that happens on this show is a fuck-up of some kind. I mean, I'm standing in front of a camera talking. That's a mistake. So yes, mistakes do happen, but if you fucked up so badly that your staff is coming under psychological harm, that someone is staying late in the office until 11 PM because they have to be there, so someone else who's working until 11 PM can continue doing their job so they can go home, but they're relying on someone else doing their job who's relying on someone else doing their job because no one knows what anyone's doing and communication has broken down and everyone's working late because of, basically, if you're crunching, you've really screwed up. So it's barely a shock that when The Last of Us Part 2 sprung a bigger leak than the ones in Northumberland, it was initially reported that an unhappy developer had done the deed. Pissed off at abuse suffered at the hands of Naughty Dog's incompetent leaders, this rogue operative had undermined the entire project by divulging its biggest secrets ahead of time. Of course, we now know this is not the case, with a currently unknown third party cited as the divulger. This has seen, in my experience, The Last of Us fans expressing vindication, almost as if, because the leaks weren't from within, that kills all talk of abusive business practices dead. Even Jason Schreier has shifted the focus entirely onto whether or not the leaks were a result of crunch, not whether or not the crunch itself spoiled the game regardless, by coming at the expense of people's physical and mental well-being. I point this out not to have a go at anyone or to lay a soft dump on the faces of Naughty Dog fans going to bat for their favourite corporate products, but to point out the pitfall of indirectly excusing crunch by making it all about this one leak, which folks have been quick to do as if the third-party nature of Naughty Dog's security breach actually justifies anything. It doesn't. It could have been an angry Naughty Dog employee or Axel fucking Rose. That's not the point. Whether or not these leaks were sprung from inside the corporate structure seriously doesn't fucking matter. That doesn't alter history. That doesn't make the crunch magically disappear. The Last of Us Part 2 was spoiled by crunch. I'm not talking about plot twists or gameplay mechanics. I'm talking spoiled as in soured, corrupted, marred the experience. We are seeing all too often how the AAA sausage is made, and it ain't pretty. Sad fact is, no one developer who worked on The Last of Us Part 2 deserved to have their brutally and unfairly coerced hard work undermined and deflated by a cheeky leaker. No one single developer deserves to have The Last of Us Part 2 spoiled. But Naughty Dog, as a company, does. This doesn't mean I justify what happened. As I said, no single person caught in the blast radius deserves it. But any game company that ignores what all credible research says about productivity, any game company that abuses the passion of its staff, any game company that puts the quality of a game above human cost, deserves to be embarrassed. This ain't about the leaks. The leaks are incidental, ancillary to the real problem. Naughty Dog is abusive. Any company that engages in crunch is, and even in an industry of corporate abusers, Naughty Dog is alleged to stand out from the pack. And that's the cost of The Last of Us Part 2. The cost you, as a video game player, may be willing to accept, because you don't have to pay it. It's called empathy! You fucking rifle! There we are.
Rifle?
Yeah, I've decided I'm gonna make rifle an insult.
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. That's all going in the take as well, obviously. Yeah, including this bit. Even though it's really breaking up the flow of the script that I recorded earlier. But abuse is how The Last of Us Part 2 was made, and abuse is a department Naughty Dog is a standout exemplar of. And that's what matters. Now look, I don't like making video games unfun. And sometimes it isn't fun to think about the business practices behind these video games. Some of the biggest and most volatile pushback I've ever received from viewers is because they were really looking forward to a game and I've said something that spoiled it by, as we said earlier, revealing how the sausage is made. And I'm only showing you a bit of sausage, just like a handful of the pink mush. One day someone is going to really kick this industry over and we're going to see all of the little worms and maggots and centipedes crawling on its silken underbelly. Silken? Silken underbelly. Ooh, it's gruesome. And I don't like doing it. Nobody likes doing it. I don't like having to do a Jimquisition video on The Last of Us Part 2, which, by the way, I haven't played yet, but I know exactly how it's going to go now. It's going to be full of backhanded compliments and snide, smarmy little references to the crunch. See our Red Dead Redemption 2 video for further details there. And I don't like doing that. Much. Thank God for me.